first poet I would love to talk about is Pablo Neruda. I first learned about Neruda back in spring of 2021 when I took a world literature class, and that class heavily focused on communism, especially. So, Pablo Neruda is his pen name. I will not sit here and butcher his given name, but he was born in Chile in 1904 and passed away in September of 1973. He was raised in southern Chile by his father, who wasn't thrilled about his interest in writing and literature. So Pablo was mostly encouraged by a future Nobel Prize winner, Gabriela Mistral, who headed the local school. And she encouraged him so much that he published his first work, an essay titled Enthusiasm and Perseverance, when he was only 13 years old. And then that persisted throughout his high school years and whatnot, and he was posting in local papers and magazines, and won literary contests throughout that time. One of his early works was an absolute breakthrough for him, and it established his reputation. It was called 20 Love Poems and a Song of Despair. This work highlighted his ability to create these sensual, passionate, and emotionally intense love poetry. And it also showcased how unbelievably talented he was at blending physical love with images of nature. Residence on Earth, published in parts 1933, 1935, and later 1947, is another one of his key works. It reflects alienation, existential themes, and a sense of chaos, the world as a place, often without clear understanding or hope initially. As time went on, Pablo's poetry became overtly political. The Spanish Civil War had a big impact on this. His political stance ties in with all of his art, and he believed poetry could and should engage with history, society, and injustice. One of his masterpieces is Canto General, an epic work celebrating the history, people, land, and struggles of Latin America. It combines lyricism, political vision, and personal voice. Obviously, a lot of the style Pablo used was rooted in love and longing and nature, but also the public, the political poetry, the justice and social issues and solidarity, and these epic history tales, and just speaking to the people. His imagery is known to be rich and full of metaphors and sensual and intimate. And later in his life, his poetry often addressed more everyday, ordinary things, simpler objects, with great care and attention, showing how even mundane elements of life can be powerful. Later in his life, he served in various diplomatic and consul positions and was active in politics, particularly with the Chilean Communist Party. His political commitments caused both acclaim and controversy. And some speculate that he might have been murdered, not passed away from just a heart attack. In 1971, he was nominated for the Chilean presidency, but withdrew to support Salvador Allende. I hope I'm saying that right. Allende later appointed him ambassador to France. Neruda won the Nobel Prize in Literature while in Paris, and I believe he received that award in Stockholm. He died in 1973, shortly after the military coup in Chile. Some of his final poems show his awareness that death was near. I think when I think of Neruda, I often think of Toni Morrison, who would always say that art is political, and the most famous authors and artists have been silenced throughout history, and Neruda, I think, is an interesting example of that. Don't worry, I will do a full episode on Toni Morrison, you best believe. But back to Neruda. So, as far as his legacy, he was regarded as one of the most influential 20th century poets in the Spanish speaking world. Many critics named him the greatest poet writing in Spanish during his lifetime. He was loved for his love poems, especially his odes, but his body of work is much broader, dealing with nature, politics, history, and the human experience. His works have been translated widely, though translations capture only a fraction of his total output. So, back when I took world literature, I did a 15-minute presentation on Franz Kafka. But in that presentation, I mentioned Kafka's zodiacs. And I want to do that with Neruda too, because I think it's interesting looking at his sun, moon, and rising, especially his sun and moon in Cancer and his rising in Pisces. Pisces rules the 12th house, which is all about the subconscious, the dream world, the underworld. And the 4th house rules family, relationships, love, things like that. And the 4th house is where Cancer is. So let's look at this. I found this one source of an astrologer who wrote a whole thing about Neruda because he is an interesting case. He has 10 water placements in his chart, which is wild in itself. I mean, his big 3 is all water, so the man was emotional, to put it lightly. He knew how to carry that emotion and how to inflict it on other people through his words. And so this astrologer named Ada, she talks about the 10th house. The 10th house is the house of reputation. So the first thing that she noticed was that Uranus is in Sagittarius. Neruda was famous for 2 things and still is famous for 2 things: revolutionary politics and poetry. And for Uranus to be in the 10th house, it's suggesting that his political work wanted to be his life's work. So that your 10th house, it is your reputation. It's like your life, your public life. And I think sometimes that can become all-encompassing, and I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but to have Pisces as his rising and to have Cancer as his sun and his moon, those are all, Cancer's known as mommy Cancer in the zodiac, so it's like people that give and give and give and give, and then there's this part where they could be taken advantage of or exploited in some way, or they could get mixed up in something, or the trust could be skewed in ways and whatnot. So I think it's interesting that he has so much water that he's dealing with, but then to have Sagittarius in the 10th house. Sagittarius is a very, I call it like a worldly placement because they love to travel. Sagittarians are known to love traveling. And I find that is fascinating. As for Saturn, which in the zodiac is known as Daddy Saturn, he's the one that comes in to teach people lessons. His Saturn was in Aquarius. And with Saturn being this sign of the revolutionary, Neruda, according to Ada, would have found satisfaction in supporting structures of a revolutionary nature. And so it's so fascinating that he became involved in politics out of all of the things. Saturn is the traditional ruler of Aquarius, and it is the sign of the revolutionary, the airy dreamer. It's the outcast child who dreams that one day things will get better. And for him to also have Pisces as the rising, Pisces are also known to be in this dreamy dream realm. So to have these two, several of these signs all as big players in his chart, it blows my mind. The difference here, though, is that Aquarians make specific plans with their dreams. Pisces are kind of vague. And Saturn is the planet of the material world. So it roots in this structure more than the other air signs, Gemini and Libra. Aquarius is all about the mind getting down to brass and tacks. What needs to be done to make things better. Aquarius also holds all of the water, and they dump it out into Pisces. Aquarius is an air sign, but there's a lot going on. If I could say honestly, genuinely, as a Leo, Aquarius is the one sign I have never been able to figure out, and I think that makes sense because on a zodiac wheel, Aquarius and Leo are opposite of each other. Just interesting side note. Now, one thing about Neruda is that he garnered a great deal of controversy for his support of Joseph Stalin, understandably. How could a man who was capable of creating such beautiful poetry also be capable of supporting a leader who murdered millions? That is a fantastic question. What does building structures to support a utopian future have to do with the Gulag? How could a person with 6 planets in Cancer, out of all of the signs, mommy Cancer, consider such a thing? Looking at someone's birth chart can't tell you how they will vote. And there's no sign of the poet who supported dictators. But a birth chart can tell you a story about why people made the mistakes that they did. Yes, it absolutely can. So this is where Neruda's Saturn in the 12th house comes in. Oh, it's been rough having Saturn in my 7th house. I can't imagine what it would be like to have it in the 12th house. So planets in the 12th house tend to be things that we have a hard time working with consciously. So in the physical sky, planets in the 12th house are invisible. They're lost behind the glare of the rising sun. Like the Arctic explorers who have become snowblind, planets in the 12th house tend to stumble around, feeling their way through a world they can't really see. So something that's interesting, a little side note about myself, I have Leo in my 12th house. And Leo is my sun sign. And I have Virgo in my 1st house. So a lot of people around me will be like, how do you not see that someone's like this? Or how do you not see that this is happening? Like, how do you not know this? And I'm like, because where my sun sign is, I can't see. It's like I have this inner knowing, this intuition that, someone might have malicious intentions towards me or whatever it may be throughout my life, but like to actually sit here and say I have that self-awareness. I do now that I'm older, but in the past I really struggled with that, and I find it interesting. Anyway, so back to the 12th house and Neruda. This stumbling around in the dark quality of Neruda's Saturn wouldn't have helped by the fact that he was born at night during the dark of the moon. A person outside beyond the reach of civilization at the moment Neruda was born would have literally been stumbling around in the dark without a light in the sky to see by. Saturn's position in Neruda's 12th house suggests that he may have had difficulty thinking clearly about the revolutionary structures he was trying to support. Do you see what I just said before about where my sun sign is? It's unreal. It's like you have this blind spot in you. And yes, Saturn is different than your sun sign, but it's similar. It's, a little worse than that. Saturn is the planet of moral boundaries and ethics. Neruda would have had a difficult time acting with consciousness and purpose on his beliefs in the physical world. With his overwhelmingly watery chart, 6 planets in Cancer, Pisces rising, Pisces south node in the 1st house, most of Neruda's psyche was oriented toward the world of the emotion. So almost kind of like Edgar Allan Poe, who often rooted people in emotion. Neruda did the same thing. Cancer is a quiet, introverted sign, most at home, caring for individuals. It is a nurturing sign that shows affection by making chicken soup and talking about feelings, or with the presence of Venus and Mercury there, especially writing love poetry. So he was so tapped, so in tune with who he is within the stars. I mean, it's unbelievable. Pisces, being his rising, is a dreamer like Aquarius, but Pisces dreams commune with all that is in the spirit of universal love. So Saturn and Aquarius know that in the physical world, being one thing necessarily means not being something else. But Pisces resists limits and boundaries, the elements necessary to creating structure. So with Pisces' traditional ruler of Jupiter in Aries, Neruda may have had a vague sense of the need to fight for his dreams. But with the Saturn, the planet that ruled his moral compass, stumbling around in the 12th house, this house of the dark, of what way is this, and I don't know what I'm doing and where I'm going, it is easy to imagine him wringing his hands in horror, not sure what concretely to do and what direction to go. However, he had a north node in an earth sign, Virgo, and he would have found the call to manifest his vision in the physical world alluring. His soul wasn't content simply to dream anymore. He needed to make something of his dreams. He did, of course, make something of his dreams when he wrote poetry. A poem gives form to dreams. Yet, as a man born at the dawn of the 20th century, he would have found himself navigating a world with little respect for poets, dreamers, and caretaking. He would have felt pressured to become a man of action, to lean into that difficult Saturn, and to turn away from his Cancerian heart. And I think his Cancerian heart really, truly only did bleed out into his poetry, from what I'm gathering. And in the end, it is the extent to which he turned away from political structures and toward the heart that this world now honors him. And he was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1971. So that is kind of my long-winded, informational, I don't want to call it a rant, a lecture? We'll call it a lecture. I want it to be a professor on Pablo Neruda. And honestly, I would like to get to the point where I just dive even deeper to these poets and their lives and whatnot. But I didn't want my first post to be ridiculously overwhelming. So I hope whoever hears this, you enjoyed this. And I hope you'll listen to the next one.